Hello, good morning. Welcome to the fifth day of the Palaver Tree. This is the Forum on Training and Professional Extent of FCAT, which is carried through thanks to the program Sarika of the Spanish Agency for International Cooperation on Development. We have also the participation of the Goethe-Institut of Madrid. We are very thankful for this collaboration. After the first sessions in the last days, we've been analyzing different subject matters according to the film program of FCAT of this year. And since yesterday, we have started to talk about training in the industry in this eighth Palaver Tree, where every year we try to promote the professional exchange in order to promote the growth of African movie industries. Today, we will analyze the existing mechanisms in Europe to co-produce and distribute African cinema, and we will focus on the case of Germany. Before presenting you the different professionals who are with us in this virtual meeting, we want to remind you of the functioning of this seminar. For 1 year, we have around table discussions, and then we have 15 minutes where you can ask questions and get answers. You can use the space questions answer or leave comments on YouTube Live. Between our forum, our discussions in the forum and the broadcasting in the YouTube Live, there's a couple of minutes of a delay, so the questions will arrive a little bit later. We have different professionals and experts who participate from different places in Germany, and they all have a long CV in the promotion of African films. We want to apologize in the name of Alex Moussa Sawadogo. He is the director of Africa Camera Film Festival. He would have liked to be with us, but he has other commitments, so he can't be with us. Sarika Hemi Lakhani is with us. She is producer at One Day Fine Day Films. She has a long experience in the co-production of African films. Also, we have with us Bernd Wolpert. He is a cinematic distributor at ECEF. It's a company specialized in distribution African films in Germany and Europe. Marc-André Schmachtel, he is responsible for cinema, television, and radio at the Goethe-Institut. And then Dorothee Wenner, she is a film expert and a programmer at the Berlinale. Before giving the floor to Dorothee, I want to thank Eloisa Suárez for her presence. She is responsible for the culture program of the Goethe-Institut in Madrid. She is with us from Madrid. You have the floor, Eloisa.
Thank you for joining us today in this panel. We are very grateful on behalf of the Goethe-Institut in Madrid, and I can say as well from our headquarters in Munich, we are very, very pleased to be part of this eighth Palaver of the Trees. The film festival, the African Film Festival in Tarifa is a great festival and a great window, and we are very happy and pleased to be part of it for the first time and hopefully for a very long time from now on. I'm also very thankful to all the panelists for accepting the invitation to talk about co-productions and films between Germany and African countries. So welcome to all of you, and I hope you enjoy and have a lot of questions to all of them, because it's a good opportunity to have very good information from very good experts. Thank you very much. Bienvenidos, welcome, willkommen, vielen Dank.
Gracias a ti, Eloisa, y en nombre de todo el SCAT.
Thank you very much, Eloisa. Also, thank you to all of the team of the Goethe-Institut in Madrid. Now we're going to start with our virtual seminar on the European mechanisms for the co-production and distribution of African cinema, the case of Germany in Africa and Europe.
Thank you very, very much to Ruth and Eloisa for this very nice introduction. And most of all to the festival de Cine Africano FCAT in Tarifa. I had the pleasure of visiting the festival 2 years ago and it was simply great. So unfortunately, I am talking today from my Berlin desk where it's not half as beautiful as Tarifa is. And it is my great pleasure to give a little bit more background to our panelists' expertise, but we will start with a round of introduction in which they will talk a little bit more about what their actual work looks like. So I'm starting to who sits next to me on my right-hand side in my computer, that is Sarika Hemi Lakhani. Sarika looks like she's in her Kastanienallee office, which is a part of Berlin. However, Sarika works between Berlin and Kenya. She's the producer and main person in charge of One Fine Day Films, an initiative that started in 2008. And it's a combination, a very unique combination of how by now more than 1,000 filmmakers from 21 African countries were trained in a system that produces films, but also trains a lot of filmmakers. Sarika will tell more about the setup, how it all happened, once we start getting into the details, looking at what One Fine Day is working on. Just maybe to add, it's not exclusively between Kenya and Germany, but the more than 1,000 African filmmakers who have participated in the programs stem majority from Kenya, but all in all, if I read correctly, Sarika, 21 African countries by now. I'm coming to Marc-André Schmachtel. Marc-André Schmachtel is in charge of the Goethe-Institut's Film, Media, Radio program in Munich. However, he has an African career, quite a bit. I think your first assignment at the Goethe-Institut was in Cameroon. Then still a volunteer, so a couple of weeks back. Meantime, he spent a lot of time in Lagos and became very, very familiar with filmmaking realities, especially in West Africa. And Marc-André has started to work on new strategies on how the Goethe-Institut interacts with filmmaking in Africa. He will talk about that in a little while. And now I come to Bernd Wolpert. Bernd Wolpert has been in this scene for longer than I think anyone else here in this virtual room. He has been there as an expert to address to for I think everyone of us here assembled. Within the German scene, he was an expert by profession, by study in his academic past, not only on African cinemas, but also Latin American cinemas. His organization, EZEF, is related to the Protestant Church and has developed over the year quite substantially in being co-producer of films. Not only, so I will stop continuing saying that Bernd EZEF is not exclusively working in Africa, but we are focusing here on African countries. So you have been co-producing a lot of African movies, but beyond that, EZEF is very much in charge of also distributing African content to German cinemas and beyond. That includes mainly the field of education. If you visit the website of EZEF, you will find an enormous wealth and richdom of how EZEF has providing information about films, for instance, to teachers and other educational institutions. So having said that, before we started talking, we agreed with the festival, and that might be interesting for all of you listening to this, that the festival has agreed to collect a useful link list of all the institutions and initiatives that might be mentioned throughout the course of this debate. So you can ask, and Federico will write the email address where you can ask for this link list after this webinar comes to an end. So originally, my first question was to Moussa Sawadogo, but since he is in Ouaga, my first question goes to Bernd Wolpert. And I would like to know from you, with having like the most historical perspective into the field we are discussing today, what is your point of view? I think we can recognize an increased interest in what's going on in Africa in general, but I would like to know from you, how do you feel this is reflecting in our little world, which is for us the biggest world, that is the world of filmmaking between African cinemas and, for instance, Germany?
Hi to everybody looking and listening, and thank you for introducing me, Dorothee. Yeah, it's really long ago when I started looking especially for African cinema. It was with friends, and we did, nowadays we speak about world cinema. In these days we spoke about cinema from third world countries, and there was a lack of African films in Germany. So at the Berlinale Festival, the biggest festival in Germany, little African films were screened because African films were more or less films from Francophone Africa. And Francophone Africa films were premiered at the Cannes Festival and not in Berlin. And so only few films were presented in Berlin. And so we started making a small film festival, not a festival, but a series, and inviting films from Paris, trying to present films, and also directors to discuss with, because of the lack of opportunities to see African films. Some days later, I switched professionally to EZEF and this educational program you mentioned, and we co-financed films. And at the time, there were in cinema only very few engaged people. So I have to mention Joachim von Mengershausen, a famous guy, a very famous producer, one of the few who co-produce African films. So normally when a filmmaker from Africa knocked at the doors of German TV, no one opened. At the time, very few commercial distributors were engaged in this field. Pandora Film in the 80s started to co-finance and distribute Yaba von Idrissa Ouedraogo. So in competition to those times, there was a lot of improvement, and things were better and better, but I don't want to follow all the steps, but to give an idea of how it was 35 years ago.
So Bernd, thank you very much of giving us a chance of looking a little bit back. I'm going now to Sarika. Sarika, as I mentioned when I introduced you, you have trained so many people by now since 2008. It's quite a substantial time as well. One Fine Day has produced a lot of films by now. I'm mentioning Supermodo, I'm mentioning Nairobi Half-Life by Tosh Gitonga, I'm mentioning Soul Boy as the first film by which One Fine Day has entered the scene. These were films that One Fine Day was very, very eager to distribute and show and release internationally. From your point of view, when working in the context you're active in, what in your view is important when starting developing a new project, to look for content that would work both sides, that is in Kenya, in all Africa, but also in Europe, in Germany, Europe, and beyond United States, and so on and so forth?
Hello, and thank you for the invitation today. I would say when it comes to the question of what do I want to produce, is what do I want to spend my life with for the next couple of years. It's much, filmmaking we always think is a sprint when in fact it's a marathon. And having produced 7 feature films for 12 years, you really need to burn, and not only burn shortly, but burn longly. So first, I think, and foremost, that is the most important question. What do you really want to produce? Which film, which story do you really want to tell? And be ready to be questioned and asked and say again and again and again and again and again and again, at not only one Christmas party, but 2, but 3. And then relatives are asking, oh, you're still working on this film. So that's my experience.
So would you be able to share with us like a few moments, like with maybe referring to, let's say, Supermodo, a film that I'm sure a lot of people who are listening to us might have seen, or Soul Boy, where you could put the finger on, well, this is what made this film work internationally?
I do believe all the films which we produced are authentic and are truthful to what the filmmaker wanted to say. I would say and you can only say that in hindsight. No one can really plan that from the beginning. I would say you can plan for 75%, but then you also need to leave the rest to some sort of magic. I think what came here is that we came into a time where it was to a certain extent an original idea, for sure. It was the hardest film to pitch because I always had to say, we're making a film about a girl which is dying, and but it's a funny film. And I think we had the luck as well that we came at a time where it was right for that. And there was, I remember that this image of our little superhero was on so many magazines, whether it concerns Supermodo or not. But little heroes and heroism in general became such a topic that it really hit a zeitgeist, which had nothing to do with the film necessarily.
Okay, so I come to Marc-André Schmachtel. Marc-André, if we are looking at what the Goethe-Institut is doing, there are Goethe institutes, there are Goethe centers in a lot, if not most, of the countries of Africa, North and Sub-Saharan Africa. I know from my experience that the Goethe-Institut is kind of a home to many, specifically independently working filmmakers. However, I'm not sure if everyone who is listening here is totally clear about what is the strategy of the Goethe-Institut. If I'm a young or experienced filmmaker from any given country, can I just go knock on the door of one of your colleagues, be it in Johannesburg or in Nairobi or in Kinshasa, and ask for support for the next film? Or would you refer to a larger strategy that the Goethe-Institut is working with when it comes to cinema cooperation between Germany and African countries?
Yeah, well, thank you first of all. Thank you, Dorothee, for the panel here as well, and the festival as well for the panel. Yeah, I mean, Goethe-Institut, maybe just to give a brief explanation what we do, what it is. Actually, is of course it's the official cultural institution of Germany. We're present in, we have actually a network of 157 institutes over the world, and then in Africa, we're not in every country, unfortunately, but in many countries, that's true. And we have like different, I won't say hierarchy, but we have different ways of being present. We have the Goethe Institute as a full institute, which is like a cultural program department, a library department, and a language department. And then we have Goethe centers that have lesser, let's say, flexibility in their activities, but as well can do programs and do very active and very important work as well. So, and concerning film, cinema, audiovisual programs, I would say that, of course, first, we are a cultural institution, so we have to be an open institute. We are an open institute that is actually, if you come knocking, there will be always an open door where you can enter and say, can I come in, can I ask a question? And I would say, yes, you can always come and enter and ask this question. I can't be sure now if every institute will give you the positive answer that you are seeking as a filmmaker, but generally we have the flexibility of reacting, and this is what we what our advantage is. Maybe if you're looking at other cultural institutions present in the continent as well, that we have the possibility of working very closely with the local within the local context and define the policy as well, or the activities that are important for us within this local or regional context as well. So we have this structure that is that we have a regional institute which sits in Johannesburg for Sub-Saharan Africa, and for Northern Africa sits in Cairo, and they have a kind of administration and programmatic responsibility for the region. But in many ways, the institute itself in the country is very flexible and can do not always what it wants, but it has a large freedom actually on reacting and working on the field. So, and from my own experience, I was, as you mentioned, I was in Cameroon and afterwards in Nigeria. I can really say it depends actually how the situation on the ground is. If there's if we see that there is a lot of activities in cinema, we normally, or we have to kind of respond as well to this this context and see how we can come in and how we can work together with these partners. And in many cases, the film is on, well, I would say always, and because I'm working now as well in the film department and headquarters, film is one of the most important activities all over the world within the Goethe-Institut. And what we do at the Goethe-Institut in headquarters, what we are doing here now is really to kind of promote German cinemas. Of course, this is our main purpose. We have, as we were spending taxpayers' money as well in Germany, we are licensing German films for non-commercial distribution worldwide. But as I mentioned earlier, this flexibility of working on the ground allows us as well to react to impulses from the country. And again, if I take my Nigerian experience, there was a lot. Of course, there is a lot of activities if you look at Nollywood, but as well in maybe not so present sectors, especially documentary, for instance. And when I came in, there was a local documentary film festival that just started, and they asked us if we could partner. And of course, I said yes. I mean, this is something where I was very keen as well on working and seeing that we can kind of cooperate and open a little bit the networks to Germany. And I think that is something that it always is possible to that, and this is actually our duty in a way as well, to promote this cultural exchange between Germany and the host country. In this case, in the film field, and what we, for instance, did was to kind of engage with partnerships with the Documentary Film Festival in Munich, with the AG Doc, which is the largest documentary association in Germany, to see if there can be exchanges going on with independent producers, documentary producers in this case, within Nigeria, and have this first talk, like really getting to know each other, trying to know what the situation is, what the funding situation is, what the kind of narrative situation is as well. What are the stories that are being told in Nigeria, or what are the stories that maybe a German audience would like to hear, which is not always the same, of course. And I think this is something where we as a Goethe-Institut can work as a transmitter, or as a kind of intermediate partner to see and to bring together these people to act as a platform. I think that this is something that we definitely are still looking at, and it's something that the Goethe-Institut in the region is very much focusing on. And yeah, there are many different ways that we are working on these fields, but I would maybe stop here to allow others as well to come in. But I think that's something really to be brief, and in a brief sentence, you can always, as a filmmaker, you can always come to a Goethe-Institut and knock on the door, and there will always be an answer for you.
That's a word. Thank you very much, Marc-André. This is, I am sure, very interesting for many African film professionals who are listening. So just to wrap up a little bit, the Goethe-Institut is active in training. For instance, there are a lot of workshops here, there. Helpful mediator, as Marc-André has said, when it comes to individual collaboration. The Goethe-Institut is also a very open house when it comes to distribution. So a festival, a screening initiative. I remember, for instance, Marc-André was supporting a living room film initiative in Lagos, where a few people have said, oh, we are tired of sitting in traffic for too long. We are going to have a festival only in Lekki. And so this was a very interesting way of creating a new film scene. And beyond what he has mentioned, and maybe we can also put later on in the link list, if you're a film addict, you can also knock on the door and maybe not only ask to see the Goethe-Institut director, but to the library. The Goethe-Institut has an amazing archive of DVDs, Blu-rays, and many of them are in the libraries of the various Goethe-Institutes. And sometimes when I was standing in front of it, I thought, wow, this is really quite something. So that's an invitation. We should put this in the link list where to find all the DVDs, which maybe some of you would be interested in seeing. So I now come to a rather delicate question, which was my initial question to Alex Moussa Sawadogo. And now this is a bit delicate because for us to answer, it might be, you know, sounding like as if we were to praise ourselves as German initiatives. Alex Moussa Sawadogo, who lives between Burkina Faso and Berlin, is the one who has a lot of experience because he's currently working in Berlin with Afrikamera. He's working in Burkina Faso with FESPACO as the newly appointed Délégué Général. He also runs the Ouaga Film Lab, but he's also been associated for a long time to Locarno. He is associated to the Short Film Festival in Winterthur and to Lausanne. So with being associated with Season 2020 in France and Jeune Francophonie, he really has a perspective. How do these Europeans behave and also behave differently? Now this from us, looking from Germany to compare with the other countries and how Britain, France, Portugal are collaborating with African countries might be a little bit difficult to ask. So I'm already now inviting everyone who is listening to put in her experience, his experience when it comes to a comparison. Nonetheless, having said this, a complicated framing of the question, I would like to ask Sarika, Bernd, and Marc-André, who has already built a bridge a little bit of comparing the work of the Goethe-Institut with the work of other cultural institutions active in various African countries. But maybe a general remark, if that would be possible, from your point of view when you compare like the activities that you're involved with in comparison to other European players.
Maybe if I come in first, of course, I mean, if we look at France, and this is maybe the elephant in the room, if the French film funding schemes are very present in Francophone Africa. Bernd mentioned it earlier as well. There's, if we compare what we can do from Goethe's Institute side, there's no big comparison actually. There's a different liga, a different level as well. But I think, I mean, what I mentioned earlier is it's a bit what I said now is to see that how to react actually on local needs as well. The one thing is to come in from a country and say, yes, these are our funding policies, and we have this funding schemes ABC, and they want to spend their money, and then you have to look at the regulations a little bit and see, okay, where does this money has to be spent? Is it has to be spent in the country itself, or has it to be spent in the funding country, so in the European country or not? So I think with this regards, from my experience and from what we can do with Goethe, we don't have this let's say, hidden agenda in a way. I mean, there's always an agenda. I want to be frank. There's always an agenda in giving money. Of course, there's no like money that will be distributed without an agenda. But I think, to be honest, I think it's something that with Goethe is more restricted to this local, maybe regional dimension, and then we have to see a bit of how this. There's a link to German reality in a way within the projects that we support, but many projects, I know of quite a lot of projects that have been supported as well, that had an entirely African context. So I think this is something that is not really, at least for Goethe-Institut, that is not an exclusive condition, that there has to be this link or spending of money as well in Germany. I think maybe this is a bit from a Goethe perspective how I would compare us to other institutions. But I don't know for Sarika and Bernd how you feel about this.
Bernd, would you please address this issue?
Yes, but I can only speak about my personal, but it's clear from my network experience. So of course in France and UK, it's completely different because of the colonial past, which is closer to their actual life. So we have a colonial past in Germany, but a long time it wasn't discussed at all. Now it's more and more discussed, and it's very necessary to do so. But because of this, the African community is more present in France and in UK than it was, and it still is in Germany. So much more films were commercially released in UK and France than in Germany. But to compete it with other countries, so for example, in Switzerland, which is a small country, 10% of the German population, but a lot of art house films, and especially films from Africa, reach the same numbers, the same figures than in Germany, which means Swiss people are very much more interested. And one link is they are more interested in, but a problem, a cultural gap is the discussion about subtitling and dubbing films. And very few African films are dubbed. When they are dubbed, screened in TV, there are terrible examples. You can destroy a film by dubbing it. But if you subtitle it from the very beginning, you can be sure less people will watch it. So there was quite an improvement that some bigger distributors switched, offering as well a dubbed version and the subtitling, which is no problem with DCPs. But Germany is not so familiar with subtitling as Scandinavia is, as Switzerland is, as the Benelux countries. And so it's a real hindrance for African films. But not only speaking about less good conditions on the part of an infrastructure for educational use. There is a very good infrastructure in Germany with film clubs and non-commercial distribution, and there is a big library not only at ETSEF but from other institutions. So you have access to a lot of pretty much African films if you are interested in. So far for the moment.
Thank you very much, Bernd. You brought up this extremely important language issue. I think we will refer to that later because it is quite a big aspect that German in African countries is not as widely spoken naturally as French, English, Portuguese, and other languages, of course. I think we should come back to that in a little while again. Before, I would like to ask Sarika, from your perspective, you working in Kenya, but also following very, very closely what other initiatives are doing, partly you're collaborating. Please share your view on the specifics of the collaboration between Germany and African countries.
Well, that is a trick question to ask someone from the inside and to have a look from the outside. We are not really, when we work together, we don't really have passports. Our interest is as filmmakers to collaborate with filmmakers, and within the mentoring context to share experience, but also to share the experience of the filmmakers in the country. So it really is a two-way side. And I don't know whether other initiatives or other, it's a very difficult question for me to answer, especially in comparison to other training initiatives. I don't really know, Dorothee, how to answer your question, I have to admit. You're muted, I think.
We are missing Moussa badly here, but thanks for trying, and thanks for trying to answer a truly difficult question. I'm aware of this. But I see also in the chat room, there is a question from Reina, following from the Spanish Cultural Center in Malabo, Equatorial Guinea. She's asking, and I think this might be a good way of leaving the more general to the more specific question, specifically when it comes to co-productions. She's asking, well, when we are talking about African cinemas, is there something to it that, before agreeing, this is the next project to fund, this is the next project to promote, this is the kind of cinema that we want to distribute. When it comes to African cinema, does it have a different way of how topics are chosen or are associated with this kind of decision making? Does it always have to be a certain range of topics, or to put it more bluntly, are African filmmakers as free as in choosing the storylines, the topics, the fields of work that they want to make films, as are Portuguese, French, or German filmmakers. What is your take on that? Yes, why not, Sarika or Bernd? I don't know.
Oh,
I can say from my experience as a filmmaker, and not from a filmmaker with a passport, that I would say yes, there is indeed a certain expectation of what an African film looks like, and we have very strongly tried to. In the beginning, you kind of try to ignore the question, and then you're always find yourself answering towards that question because this is what you think people want to hear. And it was actually at the in Taifa a couple of years ago, after we had produced Nairobi Half-Life, and I was in Tarifa to present Nairobi Half-Life, that someone from France came up to me and said, "Why have you produced this film? This is against everything we work for." And I was wondering, but what does your work have to do with our film? Like, why should we make a film which plays into your work and the African cinema you stand for? That was interesting because it wasn't an invitation necessarily for a dialogue. It was coming from and with a certain expectation. And what I can also see is that it's very difficult to have conversations outside of expectations. And I would say that it's also very important for every side to be open and to remain open. And the longer you do work in more countries in general, I think the more difficult it is to remain open and to stay open and to question not only yourself, but the system again and again and again, and not to give in, to maybe keep this little dream as well. We are currently still facing that we have produced 7 and most of them award-winning films. None of, except one, Soul Boy, but Supermodo, taking this example, Supermodo has won almost 70 awards worldwide, and no German network station has taken the film on. And I don't know why. It would be my expectation that it's a no-brainer that a film like that, which has been a German Kenyan co-production, has been as well nominated as Kenya's entry to the Oscars, and was supported by the German Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, which gets appraisal from such international juries, would be accessible to the German audience on a broader spectrum, but it has been it's not possible to find a German network station. So I would say it is on every level in the filmmaking process, whether it starts from the storyline, whether it goes all the way through funding, through distribution, that you have to deal with expectations which come from not your own experience necessarily, and to work with them, around them, communicate to them, break them. Yeah, so that's definitely a challenge.
Okay, just before I pass the word to Bernd, quickly to add, you were just referring to the TV stations not buying Supermodo, but the film you have released, One Fine Day, for everyone to listen and who doesn't know, One Fine Day works very closely with a German distributor, Rushlake Media. Sarika, please add on what experiences you've had when you had direct audience interaction with the film in the cinema. What was the difference?
So when we, Supermodo, we mainly showed here in Germany and around the world at festivals for the younger audience, because it was mainly picked up for younger audience. And what was quite interesting is because children are so much more honest sometimes in their reaction, is that when you were sitting in the cinema and then the light goes off, and then you could see on the children's faces for the first couple of minutes, they were like, wow, this is a completely different world. These are people who don't look like me, and but it was dubbed, so they can hear the language, but everything was different. And after 5 minutes, that was completely irrelevant. No one cared that this was in a different surrounding. No one film. They immediately, after 5 minutes, they super connected to the world they saw in front of them. They traveled, and that was so visible with the children. It was amazing, and it kind of reminded me so much of why it is important to show films which come from a different culture, why films are a window into a world of experience you cannot have made before, but the importance that it is possible to open up yourself to that and to have an absolute unique human enrichment, making these new experiences, not necessarily yourself, but just by watching a film.
Music to the ears of Bernd and Marc-André. What Sarika has just said, please comment.
Yeah, really music. Yes, because you described it perfect. Because films, the cinematographic art is bridging barriers, and it's really a universal language. So coming back to the questions, to this young filmmaker from Africa, I would answer, tell what you have to tell. Write a synopsis and a script, what you want to tell, and then look for partners. Because if you want to fulfill expectations from Germany, for Europe, for France, you will never succeed. And I would refer to two funny experiences. So we co-finance film and get non-commercial rights. So we are always looking for having first a commercial distributor. And I want to tell two small stories which are interesting. When we had Lumumba from Raoul Peck, a very famous film, I offered it to some German distributors. One was telling to me, who is Lumumba? What is Lumumba? Lumumba is a cocktail. No one in Berlin knows who Lumumba is. Really, it's not funny. And so in the end, I did ask a lot of German distributors. And in the end, we did it as EZEF. We are not a commercial distributor, but we started at the time 135mm copies. And we made over 3-4 years about 10,000 spectators, which is quite a number. And from this on, I had a better standing to negotiate with commercial distributors. Second story, the famous Ousmane Sembène, his film Fatkine, Moladé. Fatkine was the very first film later on distributed in Germany. But one answer from a commercial distributor was, who wants to see a lady running a petrol station in Africa? People want to see people dancing, want to see the famous countryside, but not seeing a lady, a middle-aged lady running a petrol station. And so you can see from these two small descriptions, it's impossible to fulfill expectations. You have to tell a true story, authentic story, and then you can succeed.
And if I can come in actually as well, I would underline this as well. And from my own experiences, and interestingly, I did my master's thesis actually on exactly this topic, on looking at the funding from France actually, and from Francophone bodies, how these intercultural expectations were actually. And it's quite obvious that in the 70s, 60s, 70s until the 80s, there was a clear agenda as well from a Francophone funding body that there has to be a certain element, or certain elements have to be in the film from an African country if you want to get money from France. So this was like the film Calebas and so on. That was kind of you had to show some traditional ways and so on of people living in the village and so on. This was quite obvious, and it showed in all the films that were funded, you had these elements in there. But it changed actually a little bit, and I think and now in 2020, I think there is a difference as well, a different awareness actually on what you have to show or what you can tell, and I think as well on both sides. So it's actually on the one side of the people giving money, and still there's a lot of, or the majority of these funding schemes or funding bodies are in Europe, but I think this the awareness has changed actually as well there, that you cannot kind of continue this kind of exotic exploitation thing, that you have to show certain traditional views of the African context. And on the other side, and this is where I would definitely underline what Bernd has said, there is the sensibility of African filmmakers is much more developed. It's not developed. It's 100% there, and I think the strong will of showing what Lagos in, I don't know, in 2016 looks like is totally different than showing Nigeria, where you have still to go to the cattle ranch and work in the countryside. So there's a clash of views, and actually on how to express your story, tell your story. And if I look at Viva Riva by Joe Munga, this was, I think, one of the very important examples as well, that you can succeed in this telling this story that has a very urban life and shows something that maybe many people in Europe didn't expect, or they didn't really look at. And I think this is something that is absolute and crucial, I think, for if you ever want to have this balance of looking into in each other's eyes on telling your own story. There is no other way of doing this by really telling your own story. And this cannot be a story that somebody wants to hear. It has to be your own story. And I think that's definitely something that is actually and I see it present everywhere there in African countries. Dorothee, your microphone.
This was highly interesting. I want to pick up on some of the issues that were raised and combine it. I hope everyone is forgiving me in changing my hat from moderator to also being part of the World Cinema Fund, which is attached to the Berlinale, and to counterbalance expectations like Sarika, Bernd and Marc-André have just described. One of the initiatives that the World Cinema Fund has done is to support the distribution of films. So everyone who is listening, you can apply for distribution funds when you have a film to the World Cinema Fund, and we will put this also in the link list. Thank you for bringing up Viva Riva, for instance, Marc-André. This was a film that I so distinctively remember what effect it had and how strong the influence of this film was, not only in Germany, but also within Africa. Stephen Markowitz then, it's so long ago that I can't really remember, but they kind of simultaneously released the film in 15 or 16 African countries, which I find until today absolutely remarkable.
We try to support this with Goethe as well. Yeah.
Right. So this was kind of a pilot project where the Goethe-Institut played an absolutely important role, as it is with the production of, for instance, the films that later on were done on live in the big metropolises. Marc-André, please help me. What was
African
it? Urban
metropolis.
African metropolis. Now there are programs related to VR. Other initiatives come from BMZ, from the Ministry of International Cooperation, in collaboration with the South African-based STEPS. Don Atkins, we should at least mention this here. It's a big new initiative, so there are several players. My question to you, Sarika, Bernd and Marc-André, when we see on the one hand, there is this new interest, there are all these initiatives, what is lacking? Why do we still get answers like the ones that Bernd has described, also Sarika has described, which show kind of, I don't want to sound arrogant, but I think sometimes we are really faced with an ignorance about media reality, film reality, and the quality, the spectrum of genre that is produced today in Africa. What should be done? What could be done? Or do you have any ideas of how we could get a little bit faster, a little bit further on the way that hopefully we have taken for the last couple of years? Any ideas?
If I may start, or Bernd, you want to say something? Yeah, please.
Oh, please, Mark.
No, I think what is important is actually, first of all, information. I really to have information about films, and then you mentioned like the libraries, and it's really, I think what is the first point is really to have information about films that are what are the films that you have to see, and maybe if you want to know about Nigerian films, where do you go if you want to see your Nigerian film history? Actually, you know, the film that were made in the 70s, 80s, and then 90s, and that's already a difficult question. There is no proper film library, a national film library, or something like a videotheque or something. So that's the first step where there's a challenge in a way. You have to kind of know people that have maybe private copies and so on. There are at the universities, and I'm referring now to Nigeria because this is the country where I know most of it. Actually, there are universities that have this archive, video archive, film archive as well, and there is the National Film Institute and so on. So there are some structures, but to really get a in-depth knowledge about what has been produced over the years, and to be able to refer as well to this film history, that's a big challenge in many countries. And then as well to get information about what others have done, so that you can kind of respond to maybe influences from Eastern Africa, from Western Africa, from Southern Africa, so that you kind of you are not on an island, but we work in an environment that where films are being made, and as well within the world cinema. So this is for me like really the first challenge, to have information about films that have been made in the past or are being currently made, have access to films as yes. And maybe for me, a very positive example was like is and I know there are a lot of discussions as well about this, but seeing that Netflix has produced quite a number of, or has purchased quite a number of Nigerian films, for instance, and that Moderator by Kenneth Gyang has been #1 in many countries where Netflix is present, was for me a very positive signal in a way that there is this access actually as well to those wanting to have African films at their disposal. Dorothee was present in I don't know how many international countries through Netflix. And I think that's for me was a very interesting development actually in the last 2, 3, 4 years, to see how this online reality is in a way improving actually as well the accessibility on the visibility of African films. The other thing is, and we're coming back to information for me, is as well information on how you can produce, information on where you can ask for fundings, information on what festivals are kind of relevant for my films that are being made, where can I find entry forms, etc., etc. So there's this lack I see, and I still see it in now 2020, of information being accessible freely. You don't have to pay for being, I don't know, on a certain platform, and you can get information from this platform. And that's something that we've been tackling in the last years actually with Goethe. I maybe make this little parenthesis, is to see that this platform is something that we've tried to set up with this called cinedb.africa, where we really want to have this information on how what is being done actually, on where to look for information on films or on festivals, on actually and know as well who is producing something, who is actually a director, who is a cameraman. If you want to produce or do a co-production within the African continent, if you're looking based in Nigeria and you want to do something with Kenya, where do you knock to ask, okay, who's the one who could maybe give me information about where I can ask for a sound man or sound guy or so. So this is, for me, it's really information and accessibility of information that is a crucial, extremely crucial point right now in this discussion.
Thank you, Marc-André. I'm just adding this before I pass the word to Bernd. Another useful tool, which we will add in the link list, is the B2B possibility in the Berlinale Talents website. So that, for instance, if you're a filmmaker based in Zambia and you're looking for a sound engineer and there is nobody available in Zambia, you can go to the Talents website, click in South Africa, Namibia, or one of the neighboring countries, look for the profile and you can directly write to this person. Same is true for, of course, all the film professions that are part of the Talent Alumni Network. Bernd, you wanted to add something.
Yeah, I want to focus especially on Germany because it's we are working with German target groups, and I have not the broad view of Marc-André. And I want to emphasize there was a lot of improvement over the last 20 years, so to say. We have much more distributors engaged in African cinema. We have much more producers interested and engaged in co-production. The Berlin Festival had much more, not enough, but pretty much more films about Africa, and I can name it here thanks to Dorothee, because you did a lot with Forum and also tried to bring films in competition, because even at the Berlin Festival there was this tendency you can bring African film in competition if there is a main character with white skin. And this changed, and so it happened a lot. We have to work on all levels which are mentioned. Berlin Talent Campus, well, Cinema Fund, non-commercial distribution, commercial distribution. So there is no highway to come to better results. But I want also point out of a tendency which I don't like, but I have no final, how to say, I'm not sure about. You can also react. There is a tendency films are only screened in small festivals. So some years ago, festivals were platforms for world sales, to test the film, if it works, and if it works, you can sell it to a distribution company. And now I have the feeling for African films, but also for some Latin American films, there are quite a lot of smaller regional festivals in Germany. So an African film is screened in 10 festivals in the big cities, in university towns, and that's it. No chance to find a commercial distributor, no chance to sell it to TV. If it was not co-financed by Arte, there's no chance to sell it. And so we are in a situation, those festivals, and I like these festivals, and I'm working with 2 of them, but there is a danger to close yourself in the ghetto. So reaching a small audience which are going to those festivals, but not going out to read broader population. So some years ago, we did a cooperation with Bundeszentrale für politische Bildung, the agency from the federal government, Africa on the screen, and we had 5 film tours with African filmmakers as well, documentaries, fiction films. We went to smaller towns and went to countryside, and people are interested all over Germany, but they have little access. And so these big agencies like World Cinema Fund, Ministry of Cooperation are obliged to do more in this field.
Thank you very much, Bernd. I liked your description that there is no highway, and I don't expect we will have this highway, but we have to take all different roads, which brings me to the question that is coming from, again, Malabo in Equatorial Guinea. And I'm reading it to you. I don't know if everyone can read the chat. As we are orphans, because we are the only African country that speaks Spanish in Africa, our work is limited both by the number of people and the language. How do we make our work reach other parts of the world without losing the original message when dubbing and subtitling the film? So, maybe I can say something to this, because I think all of us, we've been dealing as German native speakers with the fact that we live in a country. I won't go into the past of saying, well, this is a part of our rather, you know, the part of the fascist legacy, that we are so bound to dubbing that by now, so many years after 45, it has turned into an art form. And some people who are active in this field say, well, oh, look at it as an additional compliment. I think it's partly true. I think there are really, really good dubbing studios here, so that really it's not like how it is the tradition, let's say, in some Eastern European countries, where whether you have a young little girl being on the screen and you have like a 50-year-old man who is also talking in the same voice throughout the film in Russian or Polish. So this art form, whether it is one or not, it's an eternal debate here in my country. So definitely, in my view, I'm also a filmmaker. Of course, if you take away the voice of a person, part of the personality is lost. On the other hand, we in our country, we face at least of 1/3 loss of audience if we don't dub, because of this same situation. Now, my question to filmmaker Sarika: how do you deal with this, with the films that you have released in so many countries? What is your answer to this question coming from Equatorial Guinea?
I remember a couple of years ago, I was sitting on I was listening to a panel with Netflix, where everyone, where one representative said, well, everyone says that they want to listen to the films in original language and read subtitles. But what we know from our algorithm is that what people say and what they do at home are two different things. So the consumer, the audience, you know, and sometimes with children, they can't read the subtitles. So, for example, what we did with Supermodo, we had the unique opportunity, because don't forget, it's not only a question of an art form, it's also a question of money. Dubbing a film is extremely expensive. Our Ministry for Foreign Cooperation, they assisted us after the production of the film as well with the dubbing, because it was obvious that it would be super important to reach its audience to be dubbed, because the audience is young and won't be able to read the subtitles. And this dubbing is, I would say, is fantastic. And if you have, and I think this is where the beauty of co-production comes into play, because if you have a co-producer in the country who cares about your film, who is invested in your film, they will ensure, besides the money, and read the subtitles or the dubbing again and again and again and again, so that it this is I think the beauty, like in a marriage, in co-production, you can share the responsibility, and so I wouldn't restrain from dubbing and from subtitling. It is one of the things, you know, filmmaking in general, every filmmaker would say filmmaking is a compromise. So I wouldn't, don't give up. I always don't give up.
Yeah.
It's worth it.
Yeah.
Worth it. And,
Yeah.
and it's worth it.
Yeah, thank you, Sarika. I'm getting a message from Federico, who is like the moderator sitting next to me, only he is in Tarifa. He says that unfortunately we are running out of time for more questions. However, we still have very active participants from Equatorial Guinea, and we are trying to answer as many of those which are already in the chat room. So again, I'm mentioning that we will be working on a link list that, for instance, will mention all the initiatives, all the funding agents, Bundeszentrale für politische Bildung, all the maybe useful links for those of you who are filmmakers looking for active advice and input. So I'm looking at what can we do to better, what can African filmmakers do to co-produce and distribute their films better around the world? Now, this is a very large question. Anyone who has a short answer for the remaining minutes for, I mean, this is our overall subject matter. For distribution, maybe we should come, as we are getting towards the end, something that we haven't really discussed at length, but this is a question that very often is asked to myself, and I'm sure to our panelists as well. Filmmaker from XYZ African country gets an invitation from a festival that is specialized on African topics, waiting at the same time for an answer from Venice, Berlin, Cannes, or Rotterdam. Sarika, would you be able to say when a filmmaker is asking you, what shall I do? What do you answer?
So I think get very clear of your own expectations. What do you want? Why do you screen your film at a festival? What's your expectations? What do you want to get out of it? And then look at the certain parameters, which festival or which, like whether it also is the same question with the distributor. What can I get out of it? And if you don't know what your expectation could even be, then ask someone who has been there. And how do you do that? If you Google the lineup of the last years and then you Google the filmmakers, this is the beauty about the internet. You can, whether it's on Instagram or Facebook or through social media, get in touch with that filmmaker. I think it's not a question only of whether the information is being made available. It's also about getting informed yourself and getting clear about your own expectations.
So I was asking this question in reference to one of the questions also coming from Equatorial Guinea, the specific mechanisms of distribution. Having a film at a festival is, of course, one very important platform or springboard of a film festival to get the attention of a distributor. However, there are distributors as well as world sales who are specialized in getting this mechanism going. One of you who could give a little bit of direct input to the questions we are having in the chat room with regards to the role of distributors. How do you approach them? How do you approach a world sales? Bernd, maybe you could answer to those questions coming from the chat room.
I'll try to do so. So first I would underline what Sarika said. Look what your own expectations are, and not every film is had a chance to go to Berlin, Cannes, or Venice. So ask not only friends, but ask some professionals to give you a frank response how the film what are the chances of a film? A film could be wonderful, but it's not wonderful for a big festival. They are looking for big events. So a small festival could be the right place to come to Europe. Even if is it Tarifa, or is it Torino Film Festival, or in Swiss or in Switzerland or in Germany. Regarding distributors and world sales, it's a very delicate question. World sales could act very positive, but in some cases films are lost because if the world sale is too big, so to say, a film is part of the library, but it's not done enough for it. So if you have the chance and the network, do the first steps by yourself to ask people what is the best festival for my film. And for this, I suppose the Goethe-Institutes are wonderful because they have a very good network and contacts, and could give advice, as well as Cinema Fund or Berlin Talent Campus out of the events which took place. But on the other hand, world sales are very, very helpful because they do have an overview for the festivals. What is the right place and what is the right time to start at which festival? So it depends totally, and it's not possible to give a good answer who fulfills this this question.
Okay, I have a comment which I would like to share with you by Rosendo Gabriel Obun, that we are here in this conversation making the same mistake as always, that we as Westerners treat African countries as one. I'm sorry if this impression got through. I was hoping we were trying of always using cinema as in cinemas, being very, very well aware that the situation in Nigeria is completely different from Kenya, Egypt, Zambia, or whatever it is, and that we have to absolutely be clear about the situation of film production. Distribution, co-producing is a completely different whether we are talking about this country or another. However, I would like to give the chance to the panelists to refer to the fact that we, as Germans, have some tools that would address filmmakers coming from any African country, as opposed to us not looking precisely enough to the differences. Is there any comment from the panelists?
I mean, if I can come in actually here, it's something I wanted to say in response to Bernd as well. It's of course, and you're completely right, Dorothee, every country is different, and we have passed this actually, maybe in the distant past, there was this impression as well that, and I speak now for Goethe and as well, a bit self-critical, that there was there was this impression. Of course, we are talking to one monolithic construction in the past, but I think we are way past this now. We are not there anymore, and I think this is something actually as well that has very much improved in the last years, and the awareness is there. But I'm speaking very much from the Nigerian perspective, and if I'm addressing as well this what Bernd mentioned earlier as well, on how to kind of address your audiences in which, or where do you address actually the audiences? And this is the point where I wanted to come. If I look at the Nigerian model, Nollywood became big because it addressed a specific Nigerian audiences, and this is what made it so important. Actually, of course, Nigeria has a big population, so there's a big market, actually potential market to buy these films. But they told the stories because they knew what the people wanted to hear in their local environment, in the neighborhoods and so on. And I think this is a very important question. Where do you want to kind of go with your story? Do you want to really have it told in for that your neighbors around you understand it, or do you want to have it that people want to understand it as well in Japan or in Bolivia or elsewhere? And this is different. I think ideally it works for both audiences, but it's not always possible. So I think that's a very crucial thing as well to look at. Where do you plan to screen your film? Where do you want to be that your film has to be understood? So I think, and this is something really where you there's no country like same to each other in the African continent. So it's Senegal has a completely different audience from or Cameroon or I don't know. So and this is where I really would emphasize as well to the question earlier, looking at the festivals. And there are festivals in the African continent that are screening films as well from the continent. And I think this is where the exchange has to be done and where the experiences have to be shared as well. And again, information about these festivals, about where can I screen my films, how can I get my films into this festival, or where are training initiatives where I can get kind of a bit like how a pitch as well, how to do a pitch for selling my film to maybe a world sale or something. These are informations that are essential, I think, and are not yet there in the same amount as they would they are needed. Sorry for my bit harpering English now.
Thank you very much, Marc-André. Time is running out, but we still have a little more time, and I see yet again active Pedro Mba from Equatorial Guinea about the question how if the European co-production market, I think you're referring to the Berlin co-production market, is requesting 30% of advance financing. How can this be possible? Quick answer from me, as this is also part of the Berlin International Film Festival. The co-production market is one tool only of the various tools that we have in place. For the co-production market, it's a general rule that the way of how co-producers are fined has to be limited to a certain field. So films that are already in production that do have an incentive fund easier find co-production tools. However, the Berlinale, for instance, also has different ways of finding co-producers. Very frequently mentioned here, for instance, is Berlinale Talents, where, for instance, you can start already as a screenwriter to come on board. And this is a networking tool mainly. So whilst your project is selected for participation at Talents, you have a way of collaborating. I should mention here that this is exactly why we are partnering with the Durban Film Festival. All filmmakers coming from the African continent are free to participate in both Talents. That is one in Durban and one in Berlin. By the way, we have also partnerships in other parts of the world, but for the African continent, it's the Durban Film Festival. As a quick answer to the 30% question. And here I see a question from Kuala Bahumi. This is again the question of taste. I don't know if you were with us in the beginning of this debate where we were discussing taste of the public. Now, I don't know if you're referring to the European public, what I would assume, but maybe wrapping up again to answer to this question and giving a bit of a prospect, hopefully with a sign of hope from our three panelists here. When it comes to changes that we've been touching only upon, can you relate to a screening experience that you've had of lately, be it in a European festival, international festival, a German film festival, an online event in the last few months, or a moment where you referred to something in our country has changed, where people are hungry for new stories being told from Africa with which have the means of changing our existing perception. Now, this can be films that you have produced yourself, maybe Sarika or Bernd or Marc-André, some remarks on how you noticed this scene with regards to question number 7.
Maybe I just rename the example I mentioned earlier. The screening or the streaming actually of Oloture of Kenneth Giang. It was as well in Germany. I don't know which position it had, but it was under the top 10, I think.
Yeah.
And just the fact that this film, was commissioned, it was commissioned by Netflix, but it went into this global top 10 audience actually was for me a very, very encouraging I don't know, development to see that yes, there is an awareness that these stories are important to be streamed worldwide, that there is an international investor in a way giving money to not so young anymore but very promising and very intelligent director from Nigeria who is doing a film on this women trafficking thing theme. So I think this is something for me was absolutely encouraging, and I think was for me very highlight of the last 2 or 3 months actually.
Thank you, Marc-André. Highlight, Bernd, for you, where you thought things are moving.
Personally, the film which impressed me so much was Air Condition from Angola. I don't remember the director right now, please help me. Such a strong movie, telling personal stories, telling the story of a city and of a people in a way. Refers to a genre film. It was really striking. And a little more, not only personal, last year in Oberhausen, 2 African films got prizes at this short film festival. Zombies, experimental music video from Democratic Republic of Congo, from Dorothee. It's a striking movie, short movie showing this street artist scene, including it in a story so convincing, got a famous prize. And the other one is an Austrian director, Marion Luksch. She cooperated with Senegalese rappers and music scene and artists with her film Algorithm, discussing this digital traps and problems with a short film facing all the problems we face having this big oligopoly networks. These 2 films. Sorry to interrupt my thought.
I'm very sorry, I lost the connection for a little moment. Fradik, by the way, is the director of the film Air Conditioner. Just to mention, we are about to wrap up and giving the last word to Sarika to maybe say something about this bright moments that will allow us to look into a brighter future to come, hopefully.
Last week I was participating at the Atlas forum, which is the co-production forum of the Marrakesh International Film Festival. And very often when you watch, now in the evenings, we're all at home and we watch films, and sometimes you're under the impression, I've seen that, this is a filmmaker story, I know the dramaturgy, and now this is the 3-act structure, blah, blah, blah. It's like, will there ever be something new? So last week when I was observing those pitches, from projects in development, from projects in post-production, and there were stories and sometimes also excerpts from films, and you go like, this film, I want to watch it. and I've never seen that story, and that's something new. And I think we sometimes forget. I mean, humans are are at its we are at our best when we are curious, and to see that there is so much out there and so many films which we still haven't seen, which still need to be made. That reminded me that it's worth it where I am.
Thank you very much. I'm afraid our time is up. I hope we stay in touch with the link list that I'm sure the panelists will contribute also with a few ideas, and which we will send around to everyone who wants. And I see Ruth joining us for maybe wrapping up. Thank you all for the panelists. Thank you all for the very interesting incoming questions from all over. Bye.
Muchas gracias, Dorothee. Muchas gracias, Sarika.
Thank you very much, Dorothee, Sarika y los demás por este seminario tan interesante que nos ha servido, which have helped us to understand all the opportunities we have in co-production. Also, thank you to all the participants who have participated online and through the social networks. Thank you very much to the Goethe-Institut in Madrid for their help in organizing this seminar. And we have also received questions from the Spanish cultural centers in Malabo and Bata. Thank you for their contribution and their help. Tomorrow we have another seminar at 11 where we will analyze the situation of African cinema in the face of the virtual changes. From Tarifa, we wish you a happy cinema.